Okay, Wolfman officially seals the deal. I am a fan of Leigh Whannell directed movies. I'm also Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. The IMDb synopsis for Wolfman reads, "A family at a remote farmhouse is attacked by an unseen animal, but as the night stretches on, the father begins to transform into something unrecognizable." Okay, so Leigh Whannell, if you're not familiar with that name, wrote Saw, wrote Upgrade, Invisible Man. One or two of these I think maybe he co-wrote, so he's not solely responsible. But he also directed Upgrade and The Invisible Man. Two horror movies. Well, Upgrade is kind of a blend of sci-fi action, brutal action, and horror. Upgrade, highly recommend. You can check out my review of it on the Christian Geek Central YouTube channel. One of my favorite movies. But yeah, Invisible Man, also one that I really liked, and that was his first dip, it looks like, into potentially reviving these Universal Pictures classic monsters. And Invisible Man, I thought he did a great job with. So when I heard he was doing Wolfman, I was like, oh, I'm really curious. I've already, got at least two movies of his that I'm really liking. So with Wolfman, yeah, he continues that trend. And part of that trend is doing a lot with a little. He is, I think, a very skilled and has a style to his directing and to his camera work that elevates the material he's working with. He's not throwing a bunch of CGI at his movies. I would say Upgrade had some CGI and definitely like some stunts and stuff, but it's really impressive what he does with these lower budget movies. At least two of them, I think, through Blumhouse, which is this one is coming from them as well. And they're known for these kind of lower budget horror movies by directors that have style in their directing and excellence in their directing that elevates the final product. But anyway, yeah, so he knows how to do a lot with a little. He often lets character drive his stories, and that was the case here as well. What do you do with something like not only the Wolfman, but like werewolves in general, when it's like it's all been done? How many different versions of werewolves have we seen? How many werewolf movies have jumped the shark by now? I mean, you can't go back to this classic concept and give it the treatment it deserves by just throwing more money at it and trying to make the CG better and more impressive. No, you lean into, I think, as he did here, character and personal stakes. This is a family with a marriage becoming strained, but being fought for by the husband and wife. Blake loves his wife, loves his daughter, but he inherited a temper from the rough way that his father raised him. And he is fighting not to repeat that because he knows how much it hurt him. He does not want to emotionally scar his daughter the way that he was. And the bonds between Blake and his daughter and between Blake and his wife Charlotte are central and create the horrible tension that's felt when Blake begins changing into this inhuman creature. And on that note, the transformation is not a single pivotal scene. That's another key difference here. It's not like he gets infected and then he has this, pseudo-extended transformation scene where he's screaming and growling, and then, after maybe 30 seconds or maybe 60 if we really go crazy, then he's a werewolf. No, this is stretched out over hours. It's very slow, during which his family struggles with him becoming unlike the dad and the husband that they know. And the perspective shifts between that of Blake and his family members affect basically our understanding of what he is feeling, how he is perceiving them, and how they are feeling and how they are perceiving him. And his family, from his perspective, you might think that a movie like this, as he's changing, we're shifting really quick to the family's perspective. But no, we see, and you see this even in the trailer too, so this isn't really a spoiler, but you see like him hearing them speak and it just sounding like garbled noise. Even though he's still having intelligent thoughts in his own mind, at least for a while, they are becoming incomprehensible and strange to him as well. So it's really interesting take on this, but there's still plenty of werewolf monster terror. Even though his transformation is slow, the werewolf that infected Blake is a recurring threat almost from the beginning. But rather than try to wow us with another derivative CGI werewolf, the creature is usually at least partially obscured, but there's lots of darkness in this movie, and sometimes that can just be frustrating because I can't see what's going on. But if you have a keen intentionality and awareness of what your audience can see and what they can't see, and you know how to leverage that well, as I think Leigh Whannell does in this movie, it creates tension and you lean in. And the actor performances in this movie and the vulnerability of the characters that are being targeted by the werewolf make that creature terrifying to the very end because of their performances, because of the situations that they are in. That and also some really cringy body horror with a unique twist that I won't spoil, but just a couple moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, he did not. Now, the resolution felt a little more familiar than I would like, and I felt ahead of a couple major reveals, but the journey to those moments is the strength. And that journey really can't be spoiled. You have to just be on it yourself. You can't say, oh, this person, was really sad. Okay, great. Actually watching it play out through these performances, that is unspoilable content in a movie. And that was really the biggest strength, is watching the journey, even if I can predict some big plot beats. Now, like The Invisible Man, it does not suggest any connection to a larger Universal Pictures monsterverse. So going in, I was wondering, okay, well, since he obviously, the Invisible Man did well enough that they wanted him to come back and do Wolfman, did it do well enough that they want to start building a monsterverse, an interconnected Universal monsterverse? And it doesn't look like that's what they're doing, at least at this point. And I am fine with that, even though the pedigree of the original Universal monster movies was that they eventually started being in each other's movies. Unlike The Invisible Man, this one seems to close the door on a sequel, as the story about these particular characters at least seems over. But I mean, who knows? And either way, I'll just take good movies that are reviving these properties rather than pointlessly expensive and presumptuously ambitious franchise building. So, very happy with the choices here. As far as the cast and performances, you can probably tell what I'm going to say. Julia Garner played Charlotte, Christopher Abbott played Blake, and I was in on their performances the whole time without a single moment of feeling like I'm watching an actor making choices. I just kind of was totally bought into the story. Character drove the movie largely because of their abilities being put into effect here. And the child actress playing their daughter, she was solid, and she did what she was asked to do, and thankfully they did not expect too much of her, as many scripts do for child actors. They seem to, not impose too many great expectations on her as a performer. And so what she did do was great. All right, stunts and visuals. Mostly practical here, which I always really appreciate, including some welcome returns to those, kind of inflating makeup gags where they put a little balloon under the skin and then they pump some air into it, so you see the skin kind of bulge out as someone's changing and stuff. So a little bit of that, which was nice to come back to, but they're not trying to impress compared to other werewolf movies and stuff. It takes place at night, and it uses not just what you can't see, but what you can barely see, or what you think you see, or think you might have just seen. All of that builds tension, and these are almost certainly lessons that he learned during the making of Invisible Man, probably in the pre-production to Invisible Man as that movie was planned, because so much of that movie is about showing you empty spaces and wondering, did I just see something move? Is the Invisible Man here? Is he in this scene? Is he in this shot? And in a similar but different way, the darkness acts as something that makes you lean forward, because sometimes it's not just like you see nothing and then the monster jumps out. There's like little bits of like the steam of his breath, maybe, that you can just barely make out. This movie demands that you pay attention. And when you are, at least in my case, leaning forward and trying to see, because if you pay attention, you'll be able to see something, some little clues there maybe, then it gets you zoomed in so that the jump scares, which there aren't many. It's not a movie built on jump scares. But even so, once the action hits, you're so dialed in that it's all the more intense. Like, oh man, here we go. Oh my gosh, So, I think that there's some similar techniques, some similar philosophy brought into this movie to great effect. The camera work also takes the audience into a sort of disorienting perspective at times because of what Blake is going through in his transformation. There's also enough shaky cam in like the fight scenes to effectively make them seem more like chaotic and like out of control, without being overly shaky and just like, well, now I just can't even see what's going on, you know? So I think it hits that balance really well. And the CG that is in this movie is about those moments. I mean, largely, there's probably little bits of CG in other places, but the main CG in this movie is about giving us a sense of the perspective of what Blake is seeing when he looks at his family members as he himself is going through this transformation, because visually they appear to him to be going through changes as well. It's very interesting. And that's the kind of moment that I appreciate, because that's otherworldly. We don't know what that's supposed to look like, because that thing is not a real thing that happens outside of fever dreams, maybe. And so that's, you know, a great place to use CG, playing to its strengths and getting it out of the way and letting practical do the work in other places. The creature design, it veers from the sort of, I guess, powerful vibes, hulking vibes of most werewolf designs, and it looks a bit on the diseased side. It does not look like an enviable condition to be in. And I think it plays into, while still definitely looking like a werewolf design, it plays into this general treatment of the werewolf concept in this movie as an unknown infection of some kind. Nobody ever says werewolf, you know. This just seems to be this bizarre, fast-acting infection that within hours is putting your body through all kinds of horrible things, you know. And so I think the design of the werewolf plays into that well. Okay, themes. Is there anything of moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that could trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? Well, horror like this taps into, I think, the common experience of seeing a loved one change in a way that puts you at odds with them or hurts your relationship, especially situations like passed down generational abuse cycles, or alcoholism, or mental health problems, or degenerative aging and diseases that bring on dementia, and frightening physical changes that are hard to watch develop. There's all kinds of real world parallels to what we see happening in this movie, and depending on what your experiences are, or what your, you know, in my case, worries and fears are about the future, these things, these elements of the movie might, on a near subconscious level, kind of get into your head a little bit more than for somebody else. But I do think the average viewer may not bring these things to mind unless, you know, you're wired to look for these things. But it would be an easy springboard, I think, to think or talk about these real-world parallels fresh after seeing this movie. I think you could have some great conversations on the car ride home or at the dinner table or whatever. All right. No idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one and buy it. Maybe not right when it comes out. It's not so amazing that you're going to recommend it to everyone and just try to like with Upgrade. I'm like, hey, have you heard of this movie Upgrade? You want to come over and watch Upgrade? I love showing that movie to people. This isn't in that category, and I won't necessarily want to watch it again and again, but I'm going to want it in my collection at some point, for sure, at the right price. Maybe, you know, when it's around $15, $10, that's definitely the time to pull the trigger. Get this in your collection. You're going to want to watch any special features that come with it. You'll probably want to show it to a few people, you know, at some point. But yeah, definitely worth having in your collection, but not one you need to race out and see right now. This one is rated R for bloody, violent content, grisly images, and some language. All right, I would love to get your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that bell to stay connected to my content. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. You can get info about the benefits of joining at patreon.com/Spirit Productions. And then I hope you'll check out our podcast and stay connected to all CGC content at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Horrible beyond conception was the change which had taken place in my best friend, Crawford Tillinghast. I had indeed warned him 10 weeks before when he burst forth with his tale of what he felt himself about to discover. I have always believed that such strange,
inaccessible worlds exist at our very elbows, and now I believe I have found a way to break down the barriers. We entered the laboratory in the attic, and I observed that detestable electrical machine, glowing with a sickly, sinister, violet luminosity. Listen to me. The waves from that thing are waking 1,000 sleeping senses in us. During the interval that Tillinghast was silent, I fancied myself in some vast and incredible temple of long-dead gods. Some vague edifice of innumerable black stone columns reaching up from a floor of damp slabs to a cloudy height beyond the range of my vision. The picture was very vivid for a while, but gradually gave way to a more horrible conception. Then from the farthermost regions of remoteness, the sound softly glided into existence. It was infinitely faint, subtly vibrant, and unmistakably musical, but held a quality of surpassing wildness, which made its impact feel like a delicate torture of my whole body. "Don't move," he cautioned, "for in these rays we are able to be seen as well as to see. Remember, we're dealing with a hideous world in which we are practically helpless. Keep still." Indescribable shapes, both alive and otherwise, were mixed in disgusting disarray, and close to every known thing were whole worlds of alien, unknown entities. Foremost among the living objects were great, inky, jellyish monstrosities which flabbily quivered in harmony with the vibrations from the machine. They were present in loathsome profusion, and I saw to my horror that they overlapped, that they were semi-fluid and capable of passing through one another and through what we know as solids. These things were never still, but seemed ever floating about with some malignant purpose. "You see them? You see them? You see the things that float and flop about you and through you every moment of your life? What swept up the servants? What made them scream so loud? Don't know? You'll know soon enough. Look at me. Listen to what I say. Do you suppose there are really any such things as time and magnitude? Do you fancy there are such things as form or matter? I tell you, I have struck depths that your little brain can't picture. I have seen beyond the bounds of infinity and drawn down demons from the stars. I have harnessed the shadows that stride from world to sow death and madness. Space belongs to me, do you hear?